Hi, everybody. Welcome so much. We are so glad to have all of you here to our ML Ops and Systems info session. We have a great agenda for today. My name is Molly Larkin. I'm the Director of Operations at FourthBrain. I'm going to tell you a little bit about FourthBrain in a minute, but first I'm going to share what we are going to cover today. So first, I will give a little bit of an intro about FourthBrain, and then we have two really great guests here. They, along with our curriculum director, will be telling you a little bit more about ML Ops and what it is and where they see the trends going in this industry. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about our program specifically, so you can get some more details. And then we'll have questions at the end for all of our guests here today. Please use the chat at the right-hand side of your screen, the YouTube chat. We will be taking questions there. We will do our best to get to every question. If there's something at the end that we haven't answered, we will tell you how to get that question answered for you. So first off, I want to just welcome you all and tell you a little bit about FourthBrain. So we are a company where our mission is to get more people into AI and ML careers. So we have two programs. We offer flexible and accessible programs that are really helping people take the next step in their career journey to ML and AI. We have a machine learning engineer program, which we've run for several months at this point. And we have this new program, the ML Ops and Systems program. So we'll be telling you a little bit more about our ML Ops and Systems program today. I have been in the alternative education space for nearly 10 years at this point, and I'm so thrilled to be part of this group and part of FourthBrain, which I really think is marrying the best of content, program structure, staff. We're really excited to be here. So next, we're going to move into just a little bit about what is ML Ops? What is this field and how might you be interested in getting into it? So I'd like to introduce our guests and some of our staff. We have Carlos Azate from the AI Fund. We have Abdullah Musmar from PricewaterhouseCoopers, and we have Sohini Roy Chowdhury from FourthBrain. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves. Carlos, do you want to go first? Tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you work on.
All right, cool. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this MLOps info session today. My name is Carlos Alzate. I'm a senior AI advisor at the AI Fund, and I also serve as the general manager of the fund's Latin American headquarters here in Medellin, Colombia. I've been with the fund for a year and a half, and what I do is I typically lead the AI and ML developments in the proof of concepts and MVPs of the companies we create. And I also continue advising the companies once they are more mature. I have a technical background, so I have a PhD in ML related topics, and my main application field is NLP. Before joining the fund, I was a research scientist and manager at the IBM Research Lab in Dublin, Ireland, where I work mainly on NLP applications for health and social care, and also in computational argumentation.
Great, thank you so much. Can you just also tell the audience who may not be familiar, what is the AI Fund?
So the AI Fund, it's a venture fund that is headed by Andrew Ng. And so we create companies, we create startups and our principle is to move humanity forward. So we typically, create, go from the ideation to a company, but we also invest in existing companies. So that's basically what the fund is, and we have several companies in the portfolio, including diverse application fields.
Great, thank you so much for that intro. Abdullah, would you like to go in next and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Molly. So hello, everybody. My name is Abdullah Musmar. I am a manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers in a machine learning team. And a little bit of background about the company. So PwC is a professional services company which does consulting and financial services and many other things with its clients. It's one of the biggest firms out there. And my role is within a machine learning team to basically improve the firm's internal processes and create new AI initiatives that can make further return on the firm from many different aspects, whether it's financial or human capital or technology. And therefore, my experience with AI could touch many different fields, and it really depends on the project. I also have in my education the chance to work through different technologies, and I'm currently right now in the last months of my PhD with the University of South Florida. But before that, I started my journey in engineering and computer engineering, and then I went to information systems and studied my master's there at Carnegie Mellon. And at that time, AI was not that as common as it is now. So I kind of learned and grew with the industry as it became more and more widespread. And there's a lot more to share coming in this session. Really happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much. Sohini, would you like to go next?
Thank you everyone for joining today. So my name is Sohini Rajauri. I'm the curriculum director here at FourthBrain. It's so amazing to see the other panelists, their use cases are very much industrial and still ingrained in the industry. So, and my background has been sort of combination of both. So I was a professor at University of Washington, assistant professor for 3 years, and then I moved to industry for 3.5 years in the arena of autonomous drive. And then since last year, we've been embarking on this fascinating journey called FourthBrain. Extremely passionate about teaching, research, and education. So that is where all of our curriculum, our syllabuses, everything is. It's supposed to be as close as possible to the industrial needs, so that they mirror what the candidates would be doing right after they graduate from our program. So thank you all for joining today.
Great, thank you all so much for being here. Sohini, I think you're going to start with just a little bit of an intro about what ML Ops is, and then we'll have some questions for the panel to discuss.
Sure.
So, take it away.
So what I wanted to start with is the need for ML Ops and ML monitoring and this whole concept of machine learning in production. So let's go to the next slide. And what is the main, this is one question that I get a lot. What is MLOps? It's more of a buzzword than what's really understood. And this is actually a line I took from Wikipedia. It says MLOps is the process of taking an experimental machine learning model into production systems. So typically what happens in R&D generally stays with R&D. And then in companies, there is this data engineering teams and DevOps teams that then take it to production. But the MLOps is the process of bridging the gap so that the skill is well understood in the domain. So machine learning pieces don't just reside in R&D anymore, but they can actually be productionalized. So we understand it from a conceptual sense in most cases, but what we want to do in FourthBrain, we want to give a hands-on angle to it. So I wanted to show you a sample use case. So in this case, I'll be showing you what happens if you are trying to do automated inventory. Inventory management use case. So let's look at this, walk through this use case, and probably we'll understand, what the different areas are where, FourthBrain actually can help. So if we look at the complete MLOps workflow, the first word that you will always see connected to MLOps is the CI/CD pipeline. What that means is there is a need for continuous integration and continuous deployment. So let's say that you have a code base. How does that code base actually get into production? So if you have a training pipeline, that means there is data that comes in, there is validation, there is preparation, model training. All of this is happening actually in the background. And sometimes you can have machine learning, or you may not have machine learning in all of it. So if it's an automated inventory system, let's say, you can easily figure out how much material to stock tomorrow based off of the amount of usage that is happening today, or maybe in the last 1 week. So there is no machine learning in this, in this aspect. You're just taking stock and you're predicting what's going to happen tomorrow just based off of the regular trends. However, as soon as you start doing predictive analysis, can you start predicting if the people are going to buy more of one kind of product so that you get more lead time to prepare, or stock the products in the same way? that is when you actually can have this whole MLOps flow, where you have a staging, you have a build, you have a staging, background, and then after that the model is served to the customer, so that's the end user who's using it on the phone. And then there is this huge piece on performance monitoring, because you need to figure out, is the performance changing with time? Is it same, or does the model need an update? And whenever the model needs an update, that's when a trigger happens and this whole process repeats again. So let's show you an example in order to instill this idea a little further. So let's consider that you have data from a store A. It could be Target, Walmart, whatever. So you have consumer databases based off of what people are buying. And now, stepping through the process, you use this data to train a machine learning algorithm. So in this case, you're trying to train, are people going to be buying this particular product or not? So that's the predictive learning that you're coming up with. And if we step through the next step here, you have a beta testing where all the customers are happy. They all have the products they require, because you are able to do this inventory in a very effective way. Now what happens is, of course, if you have this app, you're not always going to service store A. Let's say now you take a new store. So if we go to store B, but now we are not really retraining the model on store B, but we just take that data and we pass it through the model. If we step through the process, what we now see is the outcome is more gobbledygook, which means we are not really able to really predict what are the products that are going to be purchased. Maybe it's the way the inventory is stacked. Maybe it's the amount of time the customers take to purchase. It's so different from store A to store B that your same ML algorithm is not able to scale anymore at production. And so the main questions that we are trying to step through in this case is, next step.
Sorry.
How would you detect if test data at production is not giving appropriate results as needed? And the main two things that we want to monitor is for how to monitor these ML models and identify there is a need of training or retraining for store B. And the next thing is how to scale across customers. So whenever we are thinking about scaling, whenever we are thinking about extending to new features with the minimal downtime, so the customer should not even know that the portal is down, but this pre-production testing and everything should happen in a shadow mode, so that again, if you have inventory from store B, it should work seamlessly. So the seamless integration is what we are talking about for the CI/CD pipeline and MLOps in this context. Lastly, I wanted to share is some of the main concepts in and around this. So what we do see is, if we step through the two main monitoring concepts, first of all, if you see right from store A to store B, you saw that there was a data drift, or there was change in the underlying data distributions, because of which you saw that the ML started performing poorly for store B. And then there can be another reason, which is, if we step through it, stepping through once more, that there is another concept of concept drift. So concept drift is, again, if an ML model is sitting there for a long time, it can actually go stale. When we say it's going stale, that there is a change in the input to the output relationship. So what we will be doing is we are going to be focusing a lot on these relationships within data distributions, on these relationships on input to output distributions, so that we are now able to monitor and detect these drifts in a timely process, and also being able to service and extend and scale in a very low, minimal downtime sort of a fashion. So that is what MLOps is all about. Give it to you, Molly.
Great, thank you so much. Really appreciate the general intro about what MLOps is and sort of giving everybody a little bit of context. What I'd like to do next is have all three of you, I'm going to ask a few questions, and I would just love to hear, some of what your thoughts are. So now that we have a little bit of a context about what MLOps is, et cetera. Oops, sorry, I'm moving my computer a little bit. Carlos, Abdullah, Sohini, I would love either of you to answer. What do you sort of see as the state of MLOps now? What are companies looking for? What's happening in the industry these days? And would Carlos like to go first?
All right. So what I see is a highly experimental, very dynamic and evolving field. And while AI and ML are being applied more and more at the business level. Companies are already aware of the difficulties and challenges of putting a machine learning system into production. So as we heard from Sohini, there are issues like retraining, model drift, data drift, and the interesting thing is that I already see a lot of changes from even 2 or 3 years ago, where this concept was kind of emerging there, but it was not really formalized, right? And it has become more and more present. And just to give you like a personal anecdote, when I was working in a research organization, and we typically did all the AI and machine learning at the research level, right? And then we will need to pass this towards the development group, and they will put these things into production. So of course, from that point of view, there was this kind of let's say fame or bad fame that researchers have, in the sense that, okay, they do the Jupyter notebooks or they train their models, but then when you need to put this into production or you need to pass it to a development team, then it's basically going to start from scratch. They basically need to start from scratch because there was this gap right in between. Like, one thing is to train a model offline and want to deploy it, but this is not actually MLOps, right? This is just the first part. But you need to, of course, keeping doing maintenance of this model and to deal with things like they were mentioned before, like, when do you decide to retrain your model? When do you decide that the performance is not satisfactory enough? When do you decide that the data that the model is seeing right now might not be the same type of distribution of the data that the model saw at training? So I'm seeing a very interesting field that is evolving, but I think although it has been a bit formalized, and you have things like this from FourthBrain where you have a formal course on it, there are still many potential for growth. I think that we can discuss it later. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Abdallah, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I was thinking about it. So the other day I read something from Andrew and G about the overall state of AI, and he described it as being in the early stages, even like with the Fortune companies, except for some of them. And I think of it as an innovation. I personally think like there is a theory about innovation where, like, once it comes out, only few people start it, and then like it goes like a bell curve. So there is some mass following, and then there's like late following, and then there's like the very last few who kind of catch on late in the game. So I feel like with MLOps, because if MLOps was kind of like not in the early stages, you would have probably seen a lot of AI applications right now, because its capability is really high, and the potential is pretty much like being described as the new electricity. So I feel like there is still a lot of ground to cover. And from what I am seeing personally within the projects that I work on and what I see what other people work on, the state of getting a project from a concept that is like being done individually or on a local place into a server being in production is not completely straightforward. Every project has its own story, and not all of them like follow a template or a guideline. So therefore, that's why I think MLOps is a concept that started evolving very recently, and I feel like it's getting up to the point where it's becoming a profession now. How can we actually get these models to work in a setting where monitoring them will not become a lot of maintenance on the people who are doing the machine learning? So yeah.
That's a really great answer, and I have a follow-up question actually for all of you too. It's a new field, and each company is a little bit different. So, as companies are looking to hire people to, fill these roles, what are the skills they're looking for, knowing that each company might be a little bit different in sort of how they do things? Do you see any trends in the general skills that people should have if they want to go into this field?
I do see like I will just probably name 3 of them just to keep things short and brief. So
Great.
I think general like software engineering skills, which are like, knowing how to program, are kind of really important. And I would say the second part is knowing cloud architectures, one of them, basically. And the third part is knowing a little bit about machine learning. So maybe not knowing complex neural network architectures, but at least knowing something about machine learning can help a little bit.
Great. Those are really helpful tips. Carlos, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's certainly very important, to know everything. Almost everything now is on cloud-based services, right? So you need to, and this is something that you need to learn quite quickly. And week by week, there are new services on all these cloud providers. So yeah, you need to ramp up, and you need to keep you up to date with all these developments. And yeah, certainly some knowledge about machine learning. I don't think is the idea is to replace a machine learning engineer, but indeed, as Abdallah mentioned, some basic knowledge on machine learning, like the basic concepts of generalization and overfitting, and the capabilities of the ability to use existing libraries, right? You don't need to implement everything from scratch, and you need to be able to quickly use a library for something that you might not know exactly what is the in depth, but you are aware of what the library is doing, and what are the fallbacks and drawbacks, and what are the advantages.
Great. Yeah, those are really good pieces of advice as well. And Sohini, at any point, if you have anything to add, please jump in.
Yeah, I just had two words to summarize what Carlos and Abdallah mentioned, and that's probably one of the questions that I'm seeing is, how is it different from the MLEs? In no way is MLOps trying to replace them at all. What the major difference that we see is MLE is trying to train things from scratch, but MLOps is more inference based. So here your goal is not to reinvent the wheel. It's just addressing that the wheel is already there. How can I actually infer from it? And so that, I can scale it out. So maybe the previous deployment was on a single node. Can I deploy it on multiple nodes now? Can I scale my to more number of customers, to more number of applications? So it's the inference. And that is exactly what we are targeting, in our FourthBrain program. So yeah, it's different. We are not replacing anyone, and we are going after the inference part.
Great. Yeah, that's really helpful to consolidate some of those pieces. Yeah. So a few of you have mentioned the fact that we're still early in ML ops. It's sort of a nascent growing field, and it's sort of hard to define. What do you see as the growth potential? Where do you see this field growing? In what ways, in what directions?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of potential. I mean, certainly the field has evolved and has matured a bit, but there are still many things that need to be defined, since it's very interesting because it's an ever-changing field that goes hand to hand with technology and the states of the art, right? Like, for instance, if we take as an example the transformers, how transformers kind of change NLP. Now, these models have been proven to be very performant in NLP tasks, but month by month there are new developments in this field, and these models are becoming bigger and bigger. And actually, there is a point in which you might not be able even to try them because you don't have all the resources or the requirements to run these things. So I think the growth potential is very huge in this sense because, for instance, how to be able to use these huge performance models in production. There is also like an emerging subtopic, which is basically try to reduce the complexity and hardware requirements for these things, trying to keep the same performance. So I think the interesting thing about MLOps is that it looks like it goes together with technology. So it changes as the state of the art changes in the machine learning field. So there are certainly a lot of growth potential for MLOps, and I think maybe in 1 year we can see that there is already a kind of a different perspective of what MLOps means compared to now, for instance. That's what those are my 50 cents on that.
Great. Yeah, I can't wait to see what it looks like in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. I'm sure it'll be much different than now even.
I want to add something to this. I feel like also overall, like the general field of AI kept growing with the growth of data and the size of data you can obtain on things. So like I want to take an example. If we look at an industry like, smart homes. So 10 years ago, maybe this industry was kind of really small. Nowadays, you can probably have data on, cameras and smart home devices and many other things that was just not there before. So I feel like every time you get new data sets, you have new ideas for what you're going to do with them in terms of AI like projects. And the more data you have, there's probably the more need for making production models that can be used on this data. Therefore, I feel like the growth of how this career and this overall like profession is going to be really big, because more and more like everything we're basically using at some point now, you get the information out there somewhere, and it can be used to make better suggestions or better experience for somebody. And there's pretty much a lot of more things to do with it.
Absolutely. I just wanted to add one more thing is what the trends we see in industry always change from time to time, right? So there's like this 3-year cycle where you see there was big data at one time, and then there was deep learning engineering at one time. I actually started my engineering career, my industry career as a deep learning engineer. So because deep learning was so prevalent at that time. But then what I'm seeing more of a trend is, again, this is coming from all of the survey that we did with several companies, is there are 2 kinds of tracks that are coming out. One is there are existing companies that already have web-based products, but they want more ML. They want to do predictive assessment. They want to do this, inventory or stocking automatically. And in that case, what happens is their job then becomes taking something from R&D to the production. So that is where MLOps comes in. And then there's a second track where there are companies that have started with an ML product. And now the goal is to, now you have this ML product, how do you now productionalize it? So you have to think about databases, does it scale or not, multiple nodes or not, big data, deployment, all of those aspects. So anybody who's trained in the programs that we're offering can actually plug away in both aspects, because we actually take on-prem as well as the cloud services into consideration. And as time evolves, as these SaaS products improve, we will definitely see this whole domain completely change as well, like Carlos and Abdullah mentioned, in the next 2 years. Preferably.
Great. Yeah, thanks for adding to that. I'm going to pause here. I see that there's a few questions that have come in. Please ask questions, everybody. That's what the chat is for. We will get to as many as we can. So I'm looking right now. There's a couple of questions. One of them is about the languages that are typically used in ML ops. So maybe you can just talk about the languages and or the common tools that people are generally looking for ML ops. And I'll give that to any of the 3 of you.
I can go quickly based off of what we are addressing. So there are 2 kinds of tooling that we do see in the industry. One is on-prem services, which is on premises. So you're not really using any cloud resources in that case. You have supercomputers and you have all of the compute you require within your premises. So in that case, you have to be good with CLI, so command line interfacing, so that you can program and put everything in the pipeline and make sure your CI/CD is happening on command line. And then there is the other infrastructure, which is using AWS and GCP, so Google Cloud as well as AWS. Typically, AWS is a pretty strong, resilient service. It has everything built into it. So right from training, build, stage, deploy to monitor, it has all of these components put together. And then, so in class, we will actually be combining both of them. So we will be providing, most of our education is around AWS and GCP, as well as if you're talking about libraries, MLOps should be absolutely, they should not they should not be concerned with libraries. So we will have use cases with PyTorch, we will have use cases with TensorFlow. We'll actually talk about all the tooling in the next few slides, but I just wanted to start with that. And Carlos and Abdullah, if you see any trends particularly in any cloud providers or any language, please do add.
I mean, what I can add to this is that I think that the language like itself for MLOps could be really a variable, depends on the project. And I know this is not the best answer, but so I would say like one of the most common languages from my personal experience is Python.
Oh, I think Abdallah dropped off. He is joining us from his phone because he lost power in his house. We'll wait for him to rejoin. Carlos, do you have anything maybe to add while we wait?
Yeah, so to continue what Abdallah was saying, yeah, Python is quite of ubiquitous in these things, but I agree, it depends on the application. So Abdallah, go ahead.
I'm so sorry, I got disconnected.
That's
yeah,
okay.
I was saying that yeah, the Python, like knowing Python as a good background language, just because it's so common. That's not really like disregarding R or any other language that's being used in machine learning. And also, I would say like knowing an OS kind of command line language. So like knowing Linux commands, for example, really well, that helps a lot. And maybe knowing a little bit more about the technology that's being used on the cloud. So whether it's, if it's AWS, like in the course here, and some other companies use Microsoft Azure. So knowing how Kubernetes basically builds on top of it, like the other, for example, like a Docker container or something like that, in order to move a whole project into production. Like that could be a good example of knowing how that whole structure works.
Great, yeah. We're going to do one more question now, and then we're going to move into the details of the program itself. But we have one more question that I think is a great question for you all, which is, how do I persuade my organization to invest in ML ops, and that we need to adopt it early and invest in people who can who have these skills?
I can take a look at it, a stab at this, because I do have personal experience with this idea with multiple projects. So usually, first of all, there is like different ways how leadership look into AI projects, and that needs to kind of be in the back of your mind always. So think about it as an ROI, and how does this AI project help translate one of the leadership goals that they're looking for. So whether it's like getting more revenue, saving costs or something. And then I would say like the technology itself is an expense, but it's not really going to be an expense that is hard as changing a process or changing the people structure. Like usually when you want to change things, there's like the people process technology framework that people usually do in many companies. So I feel like the technology part is not the hardest one, but maybe the changing the processes and people in order to meet certain leadership goals, going from that angle, that would help a lot, getting the right structure and getting things rolling. And I also would say start small, and don't shoot for like a really big transition that's going to be in a short time, because that is going to be very difficult. So yep.
Good tips, very helpful. Anything to add, Carlos or Sohini?
No, I think Abdallah was quite comprehensive about the the tips. Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to talk about our program specifically for about 15 minutes, and then we'll make sure that we leave some time at the end for questions for either the staff about the program, or for Carlos and Abdullah about ML ops in general. So I'm going to put, sorry, give me just 1 second. Going to put Sohini back up top, and we can go from there. So Sohini, we would love for you to talk a little bit more about the curriculum. Sorry, it's taking a minute to just process. There we go.
Okay, so I do see a couple of questions already streaming in about what is going to be covered. So that's why I wanted to give a peek under the hood. So the program design is all of our FourthBrain programs, we actually have a hybrid sort of a structure. What this means is during the week, you will have several lecture videos to look at. And also there's going to be a few offline assignments for you to work with. But of course, we do provide support during the week through our Slack channels. The instructors as well as TAs will always be available to answer your questions. And then there is this virtual in-class component, which is, of course, it's virtual. We don't want to be constrained to one geographical location. So in this case, typically we hold it on Saturdays. It's on 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's PST. So that's the reason why we call it hybrid, because you do have some amount of material that you cover at your own pace during the week. Takes roughly around 10 to 15 hours per week. And then the virtual class is 6 hours, including a lunch break, if you're wondering. And then what we do offer is it's all of our programs, they're actually very project based, and they're hands-on exercise based, and they all stem from a project. So these are very data centric and individual and group projects that you're going to get. So typically the 6-hour class that you're talking about, on those days you'll have problems such as today you are an MLOps engineer at X and YZ company, and this is the task that has been assigned to you. And at the end of the day, so during the whole session, you'll actually have breakout sessions. You will work with your other team members as well as with the instructor and the TA. And by the end of the session, the goal is for you to have a good understanding of what to report back to your manager or to the C-suite or whoever has given you that problem. So every single week we work through very hands-on and very to the point and recent works that are going on. The focus is always going to be scalability of the data models from small to large scale or industrial data sets. So for the capstone projects that we have going, we always use industrial grade data sets, which is at least a few gigabytes or larger. So that's the goal, and then we'll have the deployment piece in it as well. The one way in which MLOps is different from MLE is, like I mentioned, there is transfer learning is a big piece. So we are not going to be spending a lot of time on how to train models, but it's going to be how do you infer from existing models and quickly learn from it. You do a fast prototype, then you are able to monitor and you are able to figure out when to retrain, or how would you look at the metrics and understand that the model is actually not doing what it's supposed to. So let's look at the next slide, where this is actually the program outcomes and some of the tools and the platforms. So this might answer some of your questions that I do see streaming in. So by the end of the whole curriculum, you will be prepared to use these MLOps tools and skills, and all of them are actually not web-based. So if you say that you are working in a startup and then you might not have funds to work or monitor through GCP or AWS all the time, there are ways for researchers to actually do these online. So there are free tools as well that we do cover in the program as well. So managing CI/CD pipelines, just like I mentioned, whenever you hear MLOps, the first thing is CI/CD pipeline. So the goal is in the 12 weeks, you will understand very well what a CI/CD pipeline for an MLOps product or MLOps app would look like. We will be doing deployment, testing, and monitoring so that you figure out if your model needs retraining or not. And the goal will be to scale to new customers or extend to new applications. And some of the visualization. So we will be looking at all of the aspects corresponding to these ML models. So we will spend a good amount of time understanding what are the different ways in which data can be processed, pre-processing tools, some of the tooling that we can use from all of these cloud providers, or there can be some tooling in order to do this data pre-processing hands-on offline as well. Like I mentioned, this is absolutely going to be should not matter what kind of libraries you use. So PyTorch as well as TensorFlow 2.0. Deployment, yes, we are going to be using Flask, Fast API, TensorFlow, and Docker as well. We will cover big data processing, so Apache Spark, Hadoop, PySpark, Databricks. Cloud-based APIs such as Kubeflow and MLflow, we are going to give you an introduction on how to collaborate through these cloud platforms as well. AutoML is definitely another piece, so that you don't really need to sit and plug away at what are the different hyperparameters, but you can actually automate that process altogether. We will provide, the deployment is a huge piece because MLOps cannot happen without deployment. So it's inference, deployment, as well as we are going to be doing ML monitoring, going through the whole pipeline process. So how to build YAML files, how to build XML files, how to understand what these triggers are for which you're checking so that your app is healthy or not. And finally, we will also look into production software. So, Prometheus, Grafana, how do you monitor and watch your model? We will also be looking into A/B testing. So what are the different kind of A/B testing modules, that is present that you can actually utilize. And the next slide, I think this is some of the skills. So I get this question a lot, what are the skills that are getting addressed in this program per se? So like I mentioned, you will understand what the CI/CD pipeline means for ML-based applications, because that is exactly what we are trying to ingrain into the weekly modules. The ML inferencing is important rather than training. So we are not going to be focusing on training as much. We are going to be focusing on the inferencing part. We are going to have hands-on experience with multi-node processing. So big data, we are actually going to have like a live involved process or hands-on assignment on it, as well as on a hands-on experience on multi-node deployment. So if you had to do you Dockerize it, but you're using your Kubernetes to deploy, what would it look like? And finally, we will be using several inference-based projects on computer vision, natural language processing, recommendation engine, data streams, to begin with. So there'll be capstone projects as well as individual projects as well. So the program structure, again, we are starting June 19th. So the live sessions always happen on a Saturday to September 18th. 10 to 15 hours of work on your own. The Saturday live sessions, they are 6 hours and they are virtual with the instructors with breakout sessions. So you're actually not alone. We are raising a cohort where you butt heads together and you get out of the woods together. And finally, there is weekly individual projects as well as one capstone project, which is going to seal the deal for you. So you'll get at least 6-7 weeks to work on the capstone project that is on an individual use case that you can then show for. And maybe that's what you take to your higher ups in your company to show that, hey, this is what can be done. Why don't we invest in it? So by the end, you will definitely have one big glowing GitHub with all of these components put together. Over to you, Molly.
Thank you so much, Sohini. Let me hand it off to Miriam, who will talk about career services in the program.
Awesome. Thanks, Molly. So a little bit about me. My name is Miriam. I am the Career Services Manager at FourthBrain, and I'm super excited to be working with you all on your career goals in the FourthBrain MLOps program. Molly, if you could go to the next slide. So we really try to help people who come through our program fulfill their career goals by having them engage with employers. And so, just like Abdullah and Carlos. And so you'll engage with employers in a couple of ways. So the first way is through guest speaking. So we'll have guest speakers come into class. They'll share more information on their career paths, how they're incorporating ML ops into the program. We have some awesome guest speakers lined up. We have a guest speaker from SurveyMonkey coming. We have a guest speaker from Abridge AI coming. So it's going to be really great. We have a lot more lined up, but those are just a couple. We also have informational interviews. So you'll be able to meet with an industry professional who works in MLOps to give you, advice on how to, use MLOps in your career, or for you to kind of pivot career into MLOps. Any questions that you might have, they'll be able to answer it for you. And so a lot of our candidates really like informational interviews because it's kind of that one-on-one time that you would have with an employer. And it's a great way to kind of grow out your network for whatever career goals you come into the program having. And then we'll have the mock interviewing. So for mock interviewing, you will be partnered with a industry professional who will help you prepare for a mock technical interview, so that if your career goal is to pivot careers into MLOps, then you will have practice into mock technical interviewing with someone who is an expert in hiring someone in that field. And then we have Project Presentation Day. Project Presentation Day is a great way to network with employers. We had over 60 employers come to our last Project Presentation Day. And we had a couple of candidates who went through a hiring process with some of our employers as well. So Project Presentation Day is a great way to kind of expand your network, to meet employers, to talk about the projects and the work that you've been doing in the program, and to even just like grow your portfolio, right? So when you are going through an interview process, you'll have this project that you've worked on. Sohini briefly touched on it, that you can showcase to employers. And that's a little bit about career services. Molly, back to you.
Thanks so much, Miriam. So how do you join this program? How does it work? So the program, the prerequisites for the program are people who have at least a year of Python experience and also have experience with command line interface, as Sohini mentioned. Some comfort with math skills, particularly linear algebra. As Abdullah mentioned, we will be going over some basic machine learning. So you will need to learn a little bit about that. So having that background is helpful. The most important thing when you're applying to a program like this is a willingness to engage and put yourself out there and sort of commit to getting outside your comfort zone. The application process is pretty straightforward. We have an online application on our website. Takes about 15 minutes to fill out. It's about your educational and professional background. We do have a technical challenge that we will send you right away. It takes about 2 hours. And based on that, I may reach out to you to get a little bit more information, or I may accept you and you can enroll. After you apply, you are welcome to schedule time to meet with me to get any more of your questions answered. So that's sort of the brief overview of the program, what you'll learn, what it includes. So I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to go back to the questions. So I'm going to just look over here at some of the questions. And there's one thing I want to talk a little bit more about, and that's the projects. So first, I'd like, Sohini, can you just tell us a little bit more about how the capstone project works? And then Miriam, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the industry-sponsored projects and how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are doing things a little different in MLOps because, again, it's a much more shorter program. So we want to, make sure the pace is good. So how the capstone projects are going to work is, starting the first week itself, you're going to get a list of themes. So there are going to be 5, 6 topics, and there's going to be like well written out tasks. So, why you need to do this problem, what is that you're trying to solve, and how are some of the methods in which, you can actually tackle it. So there is no real elaborate way to find project partners, but it's by the end of week 4, you all will commit to one of these 5 or 6 tracks that's going on, and every single live session, whenever the breakout sessions happen, we will have weeks where you actually use the topic for that particular week in order to utilize it for your project. So we're calling them deployment use cases. So let's say that you choose an NLP use case. So it's sentiment, a detection of sentiment, if it's toxic sentiments or not. So in that case, your deployment, or if the topic for the week is ML monitoring, you will be using the ML monitoring tools for your NLP use case in that particular week. And then if another team picks computer vision, so they will be working on ML monitoring for the computer vision tasks. So it's going to be tool focused, but then in the deployment weeks, you are actually going to be using them for your own capstone project. So the team formation is thematic. You'll have these 5 or 6 themes. Out of this, some will be industry sponsored. So we actually have industry sponsored partners who have offered these themes or projects to us. So you will have an option to either choose an industry sponsored project or an independent project that we propose at the beginning. The goal is, if you have a topic of your own, we will be using the first 4 weeks to see if we can streamline that and make that a new theme or not. If the option is a yes, then that could be the project that you work on. And then at that point, it'll be just a new theme that we offer to the other students to switch to. Otherwise, You just pick one of the 5 or 6 themes, and then that becomes, your capstone project that you present in the final demo day. Over to you, Miriam.
Yeah, so a little bit more, about what Sohini said. So also some of the capstone projects that you will have to pick from are going to be industry-sponsored projects. And so what that means is that we have partnered with industry professionals or employers who have worked with us on creating kind of the parameters for these capstone projects. And so what makes this really great to have on your resume is that it's not necessarily like a project that you worked on. It's more of industry-backed experience that you can put on. You can say that, hey, I worked on this project, but it was like, for example, we had Samsung, for example, sponsor one for a previous cohort. So you could say this is a project that I worked on that Samsung sponsored, and then that looks really great to employers when you're going through a hiring process, because then they know that it's not just projects that you're kind of working on, it's beyond that. It's a project that you'd be working on that is considered it meets industry standards, or it's of a certain caliber. So employers are more likely to hire you because you have that kind of industry experience. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we partner with employers to make these capstone projects, is so that you have experience that is relevant to employers. And this makes you look great when you're going through a hiring process. So back to you, Molly.
Thanks, Miriam. Appreciate it. There is another question, which is I'm going to give back to Miriam, which is, can you tell us a little bit more about some of the companies that have, you mentioned Samsung with the project sponsoring, any more companies that have engaged with our ML, machine learning engineer program? So I might not have mentioned at the beginning, this ML Ops program, this is our first cohort starting next month. We have had several machine learning engineer cohorts as well, though. So Mary, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the partners that we have for our machine learning engineer program.
Yeah, and I can actually also mention some for MLOps as well. So, so for MLOps, actually, we have a great lineup for guest speakers. I mentioned SurveyMonkey a little bit earlier. So SurveyMonkey will be coming to, talk to you all about MLOps at SurveyMonkey. PwC is also another one. Abdullah gave great feedback on the curriculum that Sohini created for this program. We also have IBM, who might be coming to guest speak. And then for our capstone projects, we are trying to work with Samsung and Cisco to kind of create those industry-led projects. So you're going to have access to a lot of different employers for the MLOps program. And a lot of these employers have been working with us for a very long time. They also have worked with us on the MLE program, and they were kind of blown away by the, candidate caliber. And so they were super, super excited to work with us on MLOps. So you will have access to a lot of big company names. And I think that makes, it really easy to build your network and to get in front of employers if your career goal is to look for a job.
Great, thank you for adding that additional context. My next question is for Sohini. So one of the questions is about the tools that we're using in the program. I didn't see Airflow on there, and also just to ask me about model scheduling tools in general. Do you want to add to that?
So like I mentioned, for the capstone, there is definitely an opportunity to take that theme in the direction that you want to take it. So just let's say it's a thematic project. For instance, we are looking at one of the use cases, agriculture. So for agriculture, there is drone imaging, and using the drone imaging, you're trying to figure out, where the crops are not doing so well, or the soil composition at those times. So in that case, if given that is your use case, given that you have the data, given that you have already transferred learning to another model, the kind of tooling that you want to apply and then try out is absolutely, every single person in that particular thematic project team has their own independence of doing that. For the class, just for those 12 weeks, we are going to be focusing on the toolings that was there on the slide. But definitely, we definitely, would encourage and highly help and motivate students to try out a different, their different, schedulers or tools per se for the projects.
Great. Okay, we're going to take one more question about the program, and then I'm going to ask everyone to give a quick closing. This is for Sohini. A couple of people asking about the relationship between FourthBrain and the new machine learning engineer and production course with deep learning AI. So I'll just kick it off by saying we think deep learning AI courses are fabulous. Highly recommend them. So definitely go check all of them out. And they are coming out with a new program that has some similarities to ours. Sohini, do you want to maybe just talk a little bit about the overview of how we're different?
Yeah, absolutely. So during the weeks, what you will see is the stark difference between what you will get, in a Coursera course to what we do is the hands-on part of it. And if you are able to definitely answer or conceptualize MLOps for the why part using the offline learning tools, our program is very grained towards developing the how. And that is, I believe, what most of the skill or upskilling is required, because you could get the concept around the CI/CD pipeline. Yes, I have a model. Yes, I have data. I think I know how to conceptualize the MLOps or the CI/CD pipeline. But would you know exactly how to do that? What are the bottlenecks? What are the challenges? What are all the tools that are getting provided to you? So just for an instance, for the first cohort, we are also going to be covering all of the web services costs that is actually included with your tuition. So AWS or GCP. So if it's a startup, using GCP to invoke or to train something or do the inferencing, and then processing, big data processing, as well as multi-node deployment. So all of that, you will be able to get a hands-on experience doing the program that we have here, which typically in offline programs, it is harder. And the second most important aspect, how we are different, is this aspect of cohort. This is the only place where you are actually working with other people on the same project. So even on the days when we do this multi-node deployments, you are actually working together with 3-4 people in order to finally get the task done at the end of that 6-hour session. So you understand how what are the challenges of working together in a team. You understand what are the challenges of doing a capstone in a team, and also the plus points that you actually get a lot more done in a shorter amount of time. So those are the major offerings that FourthBrain is different from any other offline course curriculum out there.
Great. Thank you so much for adding that. And one thing just to add specifically, the content that Sohini is referring to during the week, videos, readings, things like that, we do pull them from a few sources. We create some of it ourselves. And by we, I mean Sohini. And then we also pull it from a few other places, including deep learning AI. So it's not the same as the deep learning AI course, but there are some similarities. Great. So we have just a couple of minutes left. What I would like to do when we close, this is for Sohini, Carlos, Abdullah. If you have to give a piece of advice for somebody looking to get into ML ops or looking to learn this content, just in general, what thought would you leave them with?
Who do you want to answer, Molly? Should we all go?
Oh, sorry. I meant for all three of you. Sohini, why don't you start first?
Well, from what I understand is the concept is new. So a lot of people struggle with, how is it different from DevOps? Is it the same thing? Or, is it just ML with DevOps? Or what are the new tools? So, the trick here is try it out. Just knowing the concept, sometimes you can sit with it, but then it may not get to the next level. The best way of experiencing, a whole domain that is getting created right now is to do it, is getting as hands-on as possible. That's the only way you will learn, and that's the only way you'll remember, and that's the only way you'll know what to change the next time on. So learning by doing, that's always the mantra we have here in FourthBrain.
Great. Carlos, what advice would you give to somebody who's looking to maybe get into this field or looking to learn these skills?
Yeah, I think as Sohini mentioned, it's a very hands-on thing. So indeed, get into it, get your hands dirty, and try to keep up to date with developments in cloud computing. I think that's something that I even for myself, when I was getting into this field, I noticed that there is always this decision on whether what service or what part of the pipeline should be done in a cloud service, or what you do it yourself, or things like that. But I think everything is evolving. I mean, these cloud computing tools are very robust, so I think it's also integrates very well with the already existing services that are running in the cloud. So that's something that I would give as an advice, to try to keep with the latest development in cloud computing services. And I think it's a very interesting career path also. I think it is now becoming very relevant, but I think I see that it will become even more relevant as companies move to deploy more AI capabilities into production at scale, right? Because there was a survey last year that put this number at 15%. So only 50% of companies are deploying AI and ML at scale, right? That's the key thing here, right? That is not just deploying your model and testing it and retraining twice, but doing it at scale, where you can have I don't know, hundreds of thousands of consumers, right, of your model. So I think I think that there is a bright path. I think if you choose to this, I think it's a very interesting kind of emerging field that still has a lot of growth potential.
Thank you, Carlos.
So I first of all want to say, like, I agree with Carlos and Sohini, and I definitely think that using and learning, focusing a lot on cloud architectures is going to be a great benefit. The thing that I want to add is the difference in the mentality of like the two professions of working in machine learning and working in ML ops. And I just want this, like, maybe as an idea, and you can think about this the more like you get into this profession. But I feel like a person who works in machine learning, they have the mentality of a researcher, and what that means is generating new ideas and trying to find a way to develop a model that to basically create this idea that hasn't been done before. For MLOps, I feel that the mentality is a little different. It's more of an engineering mentality, where you have models and you want to make sure that they run smoothly and efficiently. And if something isn't running good, like the model is poor, you want to make sure that you can point that out really well and address it. So most of the toning and structuring of your skills are going to be about that, about how to make things run as smooth and efficient as possible. And it is a absolute necessity. Like, it's something that every company is looking for, honestly. Someone who knows how to do this stuff well. So enjoy it, and it's gonna be a great career choice.
Great, thank you. That's a perfect way to end. Carlos, Abdullah, thank you so much for your time. We really enjoyed having you. For everybody who's watching, if we didn't get to your question today, I'm so sorry. Please email us at info@fourthbrain.ai, and we'll put that in the chat, so you can have that. If there's something that you're still looking to get answered, please email us. And we hope that you'll consider applying to our program. Like I said, it begins on June 19th. We are offering an early special. So if you apply and get the process by the end of this month, May 31st, we're offering you a discount of $500. So please, we hope to hear from you. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you, Miriam and Sohini. And we will see you all soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.